Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach David Bartke here.
Except that David can't make it this week. Unfortunately, his dog has died today. Very sad day for the Bartke family. But the good news is that we have a blast from the past. Joel Elston is back. Joel, it's great to have you back on the show.
It's great to hear your voice, Walt. It really is.
It's great to hear yours. How you been?
Life has been, as you know, we keep up with each other via Facebook, and things have been amazing. For those that may have been listening back when I was doing this show, I was really just getting a foster care child in to my home, and on December 7th, we're having an adoption finalization date.
Whoa!
Yes.
And what exactly does that mean now? Because how much has your family expanded?
Well, it'll be expanding by one. He came in as a foster care child, and we went through the entire process. And while this has been our overall direction since we did this, you go through quite a bit of an investigation and make sure it's working and he's settling in well. And so we finally got final approval. And on the 7th of December, he will officially be an Elston, just like any biological child they may have. Yes.
Well, that's just great news. It's been an amazing, 6-7 months for you since that whole process started, and it just
actually
was a whirlwind.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
It was it's been a little over a year, actually. Believe it or not.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Dating back to when you first connected with him. Yeah.
Right. He came into my home in October of last year, and really we've been about a year and a month. And in the world of adoption, that's a pretty quick process, believe it or not.
Okay, I'm not sure I would have called it quick, but hey, that works for me.
Some people consider, sometimes adoptions can take 2 or 3 years, as sad as that may be.
I see.
But nonetheless, it's just been an exciting time watching him grow and change, and me having to really return to be a parent as well. I've had to learn a lot as well, and
I'm sure.
learned to do a lot of things I had forgotten that you had to do, but we've managed, and my use of the law of attraction in my daily life continues. My private practice is going just at an amazing pace. I'm actually I'm working on 3 other books at the same time, but one that's been moved to the forefront is The Law of Action. It's a book that I'm writing that will be out in February of 2018.
Fantastic. And if I remember correctly, one of the reasons you had to leave the show, which I was very sad about, was because of your practice, because you have a brand new gig. How's it been working out?
Well, ironically, when I left the show, at the time I had a brand new foster child, and I also took over as COO of a company, an addiction treatment center that specializes in dealing with people with the opiate addiction. And I actually, after about a month ago, decided and I never gave up my private practice. So I actually stepped away from being COO to devote myself back to my private practice full time. I'm still an investor in the company. But I wasn't able to, as you and I have often talked, my passion is about the law of attraction and how it applies and applying it to addiction. And I attempted again to implement that into a treatment center, but a lot of times people coming off of heroin addiction and stuff, they're not really quite ready for that step. And it was hard to implement. And I also had forgotten, I'm just not really a big fan of minutia and paperwork and managing people, and being in private practice is a joyous thing. So I stepped away from that, and I'm back full blast in my private practice.
Which I imagine just took right off again. It's not like you weren't in demand.
It was again, without sounding too arrogant. I don't want to sound arrogant, but it was. I decided. I met with one of my team at the facility, and I said, "Look, I just need to step away, and I could do it gradually, or I can do it abruptly." And they said, "Well, whatever you want to do, we're good." And I said, well, let me take about a week off, and then I'll get back in my private practice, stepped away. Over that weekend, I ended up having a full slate the following week anyway. I never got my week off. So it didn't even slow down.
Wow. Talk about transition.
Yeah. And so it's like it never left. And plus what I love about I love what I do no matter where I'm doing it. But the idea that when I'm in private practice, I can set my own schedule. I'm not having to deal with the stuff that is important when you're managing a large medical company, but a lot of that stuff is absolutely the opposite of what I want to be doing with my day. Filling out forms and paperwork and getting pre-authorizations for insurance and making sure insurance companies are paying. And I'm like, wow, I don't want to ever. And my decision was actually made, Walt. You and I talked about this a long time ago. Instead of it getting out of hand, that Thursday before that Friday that I decided I wanted to step away, for the first time since I started, I didn't want to go to work. I was like, oh, I don't want to be there.
Wow. That's unusual for you too.
That's not me. Yeah. And I said, absolutely not doing that. And so I gave it one more day and I did not let it linger. I decided I will not live that again. So.
That's healthy, I believe.
Well, a lot of people may argue with it. I'm not, they're saying we probably should have stood it out, or fought it out, but I remained very good friends with everyone there. In fact, they refer several people to me. We have an ongoing. I refer back, so it's working well. And plus, it gave me a bunch of new connections that I really find valuable. So it's a win-win for everybody at this point.
Yeah, that never goes away. Having good connections, when you have those, it's everything. So
absolutely.
Something else has happened too. Since you left the show, of course, David came on, and David has been coming along really nicely. He's really starting to open up lately. I mean, it's been really good. But the old dream that you and I had about doing drive time radio has been sticking with me. It's just like been in my cross, so to speak. And recently I said, somehow we got to get phone calls on here. We want to get listeners calling because, again, something else you and I had talked about, and David was in agreement about that. So I started shopping around, and I checked out Blog Talk Radio, which I looked at before, and in the process of doing it, realized they had a little free system that you could use where you could do a half-hour show. Well, obviously I have an hour show that doesn't quite work, but I reasoned why not try to do a half hour of phone calls and then the rest of the show, like normal. So, okay, let's give it a try. So we tried it. And it actually doesn't work really nicely. There's too much editing you have to do. But at least we tried it. And in the course of trying it, I got really, really hungry for the idea of doing full radio. So I asked David, do you want to do like a once-a-day show? He said, well, I can't really do that. I said, okay, I understand. We'll still do the weekly show together, but I'm going to try to reach out. So I went to a website I found where there are a bunch of LOA coaches and placed some email contacts to about 10 or 11 of them earlier today. I've had 3 responses so far, one of whom I've already interviewed. One turned me down. A third one I'm going to interview tomorrow. And the one I spoke to today, her name is Wendy, she has a great radio voice. And I think would be a really dynamic pair. So we're actually looking at trying to do daily shows of the podcast.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
That is amazing, Walt. I'm so excited for that concept. It's one of the things that I on some level, I still would love to see happen and minimally see you do it at some point and be your fill-in guy or whatever. It would be.
I'd love to have you as a fill-in guy. I was going to even ask you that off the air, but if you're bringing it up on there, hey, Joel, if you want to be the fill-in guy, I'd love to have you.
That would be wonderful because I still still envision a over-the-air, maybe a Sirius XM kind of drive time, people calling in on their way to work kind of thing. I still see that as being just something that is so needed. And you know how passionate, you and I both are about the law of attraction and the effects that it has. No one that I continue to use it in my private practice in a way that if we could ever take that mainstream, it would just be amazing, I believe.
One of the things that I've been realizing too that's really important with this kind of a show, because I don't know about you. I've actually checked out some of the, I guess we'll call it the competition, the other people who do podcasts on the law of attraction. And the one thing that is missing is, I don't want to call it energy, entertainment. Let's call it that. It's not as entertaining. And I think entertainment has a lot to do with what you and I used to do. We used to tell stories a lot.
Right.
But more than that, it's also about making it fun. There's no fun radio, you know?
Well, I've tried to listen to a couple like you've said before, and there's some quality people with some really good ideas out there. I really respect people that are doing this.
Absolutely.
However, the delivery often is very mundane, very and not with delivered often with passion. And I love stories, and I love. You and I would end a show at times, and especially when we were doing them in the evening, I'd be like, "Whoo!" You know, it's almost like I won't be able to go to sleep tonight. You feels like we just won the Super Bowl or something after some of the shows.
Right. Absolutely, that's exactly the way it feels. Well, that's what I'm aiming for here, and in fact, David actually came up with a great idea that we've incorporated. We talk about what our wins for the week are. That's how we start off the show normally now. And so I figure, okay, there's a segment. And I'm also trying to explore other kinds of, positive news type segments and positive entertainment and so forth. And just, I haven't figured it all out yet. And I'm sure my co-hosts are going to help me figure it out too. That's part of, the collaborative process. But the goal here is just to turn it into something that goes far beyond a law of attraction show. It becomes more mainstream in the sense that it is about entertaining the audience. And as you and I both know, the radio shows that do well out there, they may entertain, but they're so negative. But by the time you're done, you feel like crap. It's terrible.
What they bring about is a lot of it is sort of based on the 24-hour news cycle that we have.
Yes.
What sells is negative, and
yes.
But the cost of that is so demeaning to the brain and to the body, and what you're inviting into your life, and that is programming. That's what you're programming your brain. And whether it's a shock talk radio talking vile, disgusting things, or it's extreme right wing or left winger that are spewing hate, that's stuff you pick up on, and that's what your reality comes. One of the things I continue to do, I don't know how long this has been, Walt, but we've been talking about this for a long time, is turning off the news. And I encourage everybody that I come in contact with frequently to turn off the news, quit watching it. And it's you'll be shocked at the number of people that say, well, I don't know if I can do that. They feel they're somehow have to watch it, and I don't understand that, but it's it really is one of the things you could do, so that when you voluntarily allow that, either through the radio, through your computer, or through your TV, that is programming the back of your brain, so to speak. It is really affecting this. I don't watch horror movies for that reason. Not that I really believe a slasher. Logically, it doesn't affect me, but it certainly has a subconscious effect on the brain.
It definitely does, and it has an effect on the listener's brain, because that's who we're doing the shows for,
Absolutely.
And what we're doing, we're trying to put a positive effect on the listener's brain, and it's working, Joel, because
right.
we've had good listeners, of course, through PRN for quite some time now. In fact, I got some numbers, Joel. We're still averaging about 500 downloads a week. Still roughly 50, 60 downloads or 50, 60 live listeners per show. So it's holding true to about what we were at when you were doing it with me. But you'll remember last fall, I ended up getting us onto iTunes so people could subscribe there. And just a few weeks ago, I got us onto Google Play. So now we're on both kinds of smartphones. And that combined with the fact that we've been promoting each show, I tell people, sign up. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, go to loatoday.net and sign up there so you can not miss any episodes. And they've been doing it. When you and I were doing it, we weren't really pushing that aspect of it as much. And so,
right.
We were getting, probably 10 to 20 people listening to a podcast over the course of time and so forth. For a month, I think, like April was your last month, and I think for April we got somewhere on the order of 400 or 500 listeners, 400 or 500 downloads for the month. Would you believe that in October we had 1,500 downloads? In November we're currently on pace for about 2,200, and at the rate of increase, it could be as high as 2,900 downloads.
Wow,
it's just
that is
off.
awesome. Oh, wow.
I mean, I've graphed it.
Doubt.
It's a straight up graph.
I had no doubt. I had no doubt. This is such a just it makes my heart swell of excitement, full of excitement and joy that this is we're reaching the people, because you and I, we go back a long time in how we ran across this several years ago.
Right.
And I mean, it's been, 5 or 6 years before we had our first interview. And I just find it.
Would you like to know? It was December 2012.
Wow. 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 That's amazing. And that's and to see this grow, I've never doubted it. And I know this concept is the answer. And I've every day I still do. I study it. I look at all the different views of it and implement it in my life, and have really gotten to a point where it's such a blessing in my life. I share it with about everybody I run across, and it's I'm sure some people run when they see me coming at this point, but that there are some people that, okay, we've heard that already.
Well, actually, not true. We've had a couple calls so far, and one of them told us that he'd been listening since before David come on board. So that was when you were around. So they aren't all running. Wow. That's good.
Okay, well that's a beautiful thing. So that's just great news that this is going so well. I'm glad David's there, and I would love to see that daily thing take off. That would just be closer and closer to that ultimate goal.
And your phone's going to ring. I'm going to call you. I'm going to call on you. It's going to be at fixed times, I'm afraid, but you're going to get called, and Joel, you're going to have to come on at some point, okay?
Absolutely. I mean, I could. We probably at a point, if you're going to do it every day, I could probably do it once a week if you want to do that. Be one of the days. If
really?
You need it. So yeah.
Shoot, let's close the deal.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. I'd be really glad. I wish I could give you more, but I once a week, I could certainly do that.
Oh, I'd love to have you for once a week, because we had so much fun when we were doing it before. I just want to get that back. That was just great.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great news. Yeah, I'm so glad you emailed me today, because I was like, that's great. I have a free evening tonight. That's worked out really nicely.
It's amazing how this stuff works out. David has a rough day, and condolences obviously go out to him because of the death of his dog, who's quite elderly, yeah. But, it's always rough when you go through something like that. But look how such a sad event turns into something great. It's wonderful.
Well, and that's sort of how you have to use life that way. Oh, yeah. It's that, and my thoughts are with David as well, and I know that he'll eventually find the joy that his pet brought to his life, and that's where you and I tend to focus. So I'm sure David
absolutely,
is,
and he does too. David is really good at that kind of focus. So I'm sure he won't be hanging down the dumps very long. He'll find the silver lining, and he'll be moving on pretty quick. But still, it's a tough day for him.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, what we've been doing, Joel, back when you and I were doing it, we were going through books one chapter at a time, and David and I are doing that also. We've been working our way through Ask and It Is Given by Abraham-Hicks, and we're up to chapter 14. We've done 13 chapters so far. We're up to 14. Now, I've got a copy here. I know you don't, but I'll read some pertinent passages. That's all we ever usually need to get going. So this particular chapter is entitled or subtitled, Some Things You Knew Before You Arrived. So this is kind of like that spooky, wooey, spiritual side of Abraham-Hicks, but it's still interesting. And I'll be curious to see how much this matches up with your beliefs. I know it matches mine, but I don't know if it matches yours. We'll find out.
Okay.
Excuse me. So let me start reading here. It says, it is helpful to remember that you are creators who have come into this leading edge time-space reality to experience the joy of directing source energy into the specifics of your physical life experience. And as you made the decision to come into this body, you knew that you were a creator and that the earth environment would inspire your specific creation. You also knew that whenever you asked, it would be given. And you were thrilled at the prospect of being inspired to attain your own specific desires, understanding that source would flow through you to achieve the completion of those desires. Now, that's a very audacious beginning. Okay, it's declaring something about, okay, we knew what was going on according to this before we even got here. How does that match up with what you think?
Absolutely, completely what I believe, 100%.
Okay.
I think it, and I don't in personal belief. I don't think this is our first rodeo. I think it's been a few rodeos, maybe, and for some of us, it might have been thousands of rodeos. So I really believe that we're pure energy, and when we're not here, we're in energy form, and then we choose to come back. And I also believe we choose the path that we are going to live. It would explain a lot to me. It's the only thing that really makes sense to me of why, if someone who I have a belief that if in a previous life, if you had this trouble or there's stuff you need to work on, I think you accept challenges that you come in the world to face. And I think the point of them is to overcome what you have to deal with. So I don't know if that's how you believe.
That's a topic you and I talked about a lot, the idea of the dealing with the challenges and how challenges are what you make out of them. I keep remembering all those conversations we had.
Yes. Yes. And I think that is something that, someone who, it was explained to me by a friend who really believed this as well. And he had a son that was born very disabled and really never could open his eyes, could never talk. He was totally dependent on care his entire life and only lived probably about 12 or 13 years. And it was very difficult. Yeah, very horrible. However, his belief was that in a previous life that his son's name was John, that John was probably a very arrogant man that he never wanted anybody to take care of him. He probably chose that path or something in that area, that anybody that you choose what you face and have to go through to experience it. And it's in one of the Abraham books, either the book or it's in one of the podcasts I was listening to or YouTube things I was listening to, they ask Abraham, if you're pure energy and you know everything already, why would you choose to come back in physical form? And the answer blew me away. Abraham's answer was, how do you know what chocolate tastes like?
Yes.
You have to come to physical form to experience emotion. When you're raw energy, there's no emotion. You know what's going to happen. There's no time. There's no dealing with stuff. Whereas energy, that's energy, but you come into the physical form, and then you have to figure it all out. All that information is gone. It's sort of like you're given this body with no script. You have no idea what to do with it. It's like, wow. And I've often told you, and we talk about this a lot. When I was young, being brought up in a Southern Baptist home where I was told certain things that I just, even as a small child, I was like, wow, I just can't swallow that. That's just not right. And then when I heard the law of attraction, I instantaneously knew, this is it. Yep, this is it, right there.
Very interesting.
It resonated inside of me.
Yeah. I think it actually resonated with me very much the same way, in the sense particularly that it was the first time I heard something about, speculating about what the other side is like, where we're coming from, how it all fits together. And it really did fit together. I can't say that about the other teachings that were presented to me. They didn't make any sense to me. There were too many things that, they would project certain ideas about, what God is and so forth. And then they would present other ideas that seemed to contradict what they were saying. And they didn't seem to notice the contradiction. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this doesn't work, guys. But I couldn't say it,
Well, yeah, but unfortunately at 12 I often did, and then the preacher said I was Satan was somehow in my body or something. But
that's right.
I very much I love what that feels right. Now I don't know all the details. I don't know exactly how it works, so I'm not trying to go out on a limb and say definitely. But I do encourage people to think about it. I've had experiences. My dad took me to overseas trips before where I thought I'd been there before, and even though I never had been there before, and I've had moments where I've seen things, and I've recalled things from that don't fit this timeline, so to speak. And I don't know how it works, and I don't waste a lot of energy trying to figure it out. But I do think that we were conscious. We were an energy that was conscious before we were born here, and I believe we're an energy that will remain conscious when this body ceases to work.
Well, interestingly enough, the chapter actually does go into some fairly distinct detail about how it all works. So let me read some of the bullet points to you. It says, when you came into this world, you also knew the following. Bullet 1, by always reaching for the feeling of joy or well-being, you would always be moving toward that which you desire. Number 2, in the process of moving toward your desires, you would experience joy. Third, in this earth plane environment, you would have sufficient leeway to mold your vibration into a pleasing position for the attraction of a wonderful life experience. Fourth, since well-being is the basis of this wonderful universe, you would have sufficient opportunity through a continual offering of thought to mold your own thoughts into pleasing life experiences. Fifth, because well-being abounds, so you felt no risk or concern about the contrasting environment into which you were moving. Next, variety would help you choose your specific life. And then your work was to direct your thoughts, and that in doing so, your life would unfold. That you are an eternal extension of source energy, and that the basis of that which you are is good. That you would be able to easily allow the well-being of your origin and of your source to steadily flow through you. And then you would never get very far from your source, and that you could never completely pinch yourself off from it. In fact, you would experience immediate emotions to help you understand the direction of your thought, and that your emotions would instantly tell you if you were in any moment moving toward or away from what you desired. And you would know by the way you were feeling, moment by moment, how much you were allowing your connection to the stream of well-being. And so you came forth into this earth experience with eager anticipation of a wonderful life. And then finally, as you also knew that there would not be an immediate manifestation of any thought, so that you would have ample opportunity to mold, evaluate, decide, and enjoy the creative process. That's quite a bit packaged into what you knew before you got here.
I believe that, and that does seem to match the overall thought process that I've had, and it matches what I remember. As a child, actually, and one of the things that I remember, this will sound silly to you, so bear with me just a second, but we took a trip to Denver, and I was younger. I wasn't a baby, but I was younger. And I remember flying out to Denver thinking, I had this bizarre thought that Denver may or may not exist, but they were building it for me. And so when we arrived, there was a lot of construction going around, like always, on these big airports. And I remember thinking to myself, "Yep, they didn't get it finished in time." My son TJ, one time we were in Orlando. We walked up to this crosswalk that had a button you press. Well, I pressed the button to go across the street, and he didn't see me press the button. And so he said, this happened. He said, yep, it saw me come. The light saw me come, and it turned for me. And we laughed about that. But as a child, there is this belief that the world is ours, and we create our world, and then we're told that's not true. But I believe we're closer to the reality back when we were thinking we were a child. It is about us. It really is. We create our world. Yeah, and it's funny. That's a lot of what this is when you're born. I think you sense that, and then it's almost, in some people's case, literally beaten out of them that it's not about you. And when you back up and say, wait a minute, no, it really is. You create your world.
I can't remember where I heard it. But there was I think it was Abraham-Hicks. And it was somebody, I think it was one of the emails they send out. That's what it was. I don't know if you still subscribe to the email list, but I do. One of those emails said something to the effect of parents try to mold their kids once they come into the world in order to have successful lives, but they would actually be better off if they listened to the kids. That's not what it said, but that was the gist of it.
Yes.
And it makes sense because the kids have been there more recently than we have. They've been in direct contact in all ways with source energy more recently than we have, so of course they're going to have a better sense of it.
Right. It's the I completely believe that. I heard one of the talks I was listening to, a gentleman said, what if when you die you see that light that everybody reports near-death experience. He said, what if that's the light of the operating or the delivery room? And I'm like, wow.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, that was he said, that's what I think that light is. This is the delivery room for your next step. And that's whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I do know that I instinctively, as I mentioned, when I know the pieces of this that I got right. I'm still looking. I'm still searching. There's still some sub areas that I'm working on, but the overall concept is completely. There is zero debate in my mind of the authenticity of the law of attraction, and my instincts tell me that. So much like this chapter is talking about, even before we're born, we knew these basic things, and we feel that up until 3, 4, or 5, and until you're just told no. This is how you're supposed to feel. This is the reality. Well, you're being taken away from reality when you're told that.
Yeah, I think that's true. You're being disconnected. You're pinching off, as the phrase is in that little section I was reading. You're pinching off from the source, and you're pinching off from what feels good, and you're pinching off from what is good for you. And,
right.
and that pinching off is not good.
No,
I mean,
no,
it is good. Pinching
yeah.
off is obviously where you're meeting challenges and you're working through stuff and so forth. So that part is good.
Right.
But deliberately pinching yourself off just for the sake of pinching off, that's not so good.
Oh no, and that's and as we discover, the beauty of it is there's no way to know exactly the exact process, but you do know. Like I do believe that so much of this feels so real and so, I got it. Yes, this makes sense. This explains so much stuff to me that nothing else ever explained. And so this, I think we come into the world with just ridiculous amount of knowledge, of a lot more knowledge, and then as we grow, there have been multiple times. And I don't have the one particular website, but there's multiple reports of children especially that talk real early, that are explaining the other life. And
right.
I believe there's in Russia, some young kid took the people to a murder spot that he claimed to be the man that was murdered, and took him to where he was at.
Oh my!
And so there's a lot of stuff out there to suggest that it is possible, and I guess that's why we, Abraham-Hicks, they're so in tune. They're so I just enjoy what they bring to the table so much, and probably 95% of what they bring to the table, I'm just really all over. It took me a while to get all the way in with them too, because I've always they do get on that edge sometimes.
They do, yeah. You have to kind of skate with them a little bit.
Yes,
but.
Yes.
Now, the rest of this chapter, they're starting to address some of the concerns and objections that people raise. I thought it'd be fun just to hit what the objection was, and we just address it directly instead of just doing what the book says. So
yes.
If you're game, let's go through those.
Let's do
First
it.
one, it's a quote. It says, "Well, if I know so much, how come I'm not successful?"
It's pretty much, in my opinion, that answer is pretty much what we sort of just touched on. If we had the chance to be successful at 2 months old, I think we'd be really successful. But our cognitive abilities have not matured with the brain that we've been given. I think the reason a lot of people we are pinched off or cut off from our source. We aren't in tune with what we're supposed to be doing. We are doing what we were told we are supposed to be doing. We're doing it in the format that's been delivered. It's the same concept that, we've talked a lot about. I have really bad, that's a bad way. I have really good ADHD. I have a really great case of it. And I happen
successful.
to think, yeah, I do really well. And I'm very excited about that. But I believe I have a superpower brain. Now, I was taught with a format of teaching that could not, I thought I was dumb. It was Einstein that said you can't judge a fish's intelligence by its ability to climb a tree. It's that same concept with me of if I would have had someone teaching my brain at the rate in the way my brain could have learned, there would have been no limits. Well, I figured that out later, and there are no limits. But I was very unsuccessful trying to fit my what would be square peg into the round hole of society until I figured this out. So I think the answer to the question, you do know so much, but you've forgotten the relevant piece, and you're replacing it what you've been programmed with.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also come at it from a slightly different angle too. One of the things that we were talking before about how traditional religion didn't work really well for either one of us. One of the things that did not work well for me was the whole question of prayer as it's presented within Christian churches. The question I would raise is, well, why aren't prayers answered? And depending on what kind of church you went to, there were a couple different answers, but the most common one was prayers are always answered, but sometimes the answer is no. And that just didn't sit with me. It didn't sit well.
Right.
I mean, I understood what they were trying to say, but how do you have that with an all-powerful God? I mean, all-powerful God doesn't need me to behave a certain way or whatever. If you're all-powerful, you don't worry about stuff like that. It's not a big deal, So why would that be a part of it? And I never really got that. Then when I started studying the law of attraction and all the spiritual side of that, a new answer came to me. The new answer was all prayers are answered, and the answer is always yes. And that threw me for a loop for a minute, but I liked it initially, so I stayed with it, and I realized that it was true. The reason why the prayers seem like they aren't answered is because we ask for one thing, and then we change what we're asking for without realizing it. So one moment we're saying, I want to attract a new car into my life. And then for the next 5 minutes, we're saying, this is never going to happen. Well, that's the law of attraction says yes and yes. Yes, you can have the new car, and yes, it will never happen.
Well, I think, and I think this is maybe reframing a little bit how you said it. It's exactly the same thought, where we say what we want, but our behavior and thoughts are the total opposite of that. It's the, I want to, I was working with a young man. Finally we've got him over the hump, but he loved the law of attraction. About the third week into it, he says, "Well, I've been really working on this, but nothing's happening." And I said, "Well, when we walked through the process, and he says, I really want a high-end sales job, and I really want to." I said, "Well, how many jobs have you applied to?" I said, "Well, I applied to several online." I said, "How many dealerships would you do a high-end car dealership? How many of those dealerships have you dressed up, gone to, talked to?" "Well, none." "Well, go do that. Go do that. Go do that." I go, "Well, it doesn't matter what they say. Go do it." Well, he went to the local Mercedes dealership. They loved him, hired him on the spot. It just he took the action to match the what he was saying. A lot of times we say we want something, but our actions and thoughts and true beliefs are the exact opposite. That's why very few people, the idea, I really want to win the lottery. Well, you don't really believe you're going to win the lottery, and that's
right. Why
you're not going to win the lottery. And you have 7 billion people that really believe they want to win the lottery.
It's a sad but true fact. And the sad but true fact is that as long as people are not 100% good at staying in the space of what they are wanting in the first place, what they're desiring, and not getting away from it, then they're going to get inconsistent results. That's just the nature of it.
Absolutely. So I think that's the answer to that one right there.
I think so too. I think we've nailed it. So let's get to the next one. Okay. I like this one. This is open-ended. Can I really count on the law of attraction?
My initial life coaching therapeutic answer when I asked that, I would immediately say, "Can you count on gravity?"
Yes,
it's the same.
I have the same thought.
It's the same thought. Of course, you can count on it. It is guaranteed. It's not negotiable. It's the same thing. The application of it isn't where very few people I know that get to the place where it's this, and I feel I'm as close to that as I've been. There's zero world of mine where I worry about finances, health. That doesn't happen, because I'm so convinced. Like I mentioned, I decided I'm going to leave one company and get back into my private practice. I don't even get a week off before it just happened. And it's just, I didn't even have to go do anything. It happened. And that
right.
was a real clear indicator to me that I'm so in tune with that side of it. It's going to be there. I find it is the most steady, most dependable thought, belief, or whatever you want to have, that I've ever encountered. It is exceptionally dependable. However, not always doing it the way you're supposed to be doing it will not always give you the results. Just like you said earlier, we that preconditioned stuff of, well, I want a new car, but no, you don't. It's not going to happen. Or I've often used that thought process when I work with people. A person that's making $50,000 a year and comes to me and says, I want to make $1 million a year, I tell them they can't. And they said, well, no, the law of attraction doesn't say you can't. You say you can't. You don't believe you can do that. But do you believe you can take your 50 to 60? Yeah, I do that. They do that. You get the 60 to the next, yes. And then next thing you know, they're going up. They get a belief, it happens. But that belief has to be true and unnegotiable with you.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's like the story I told you quite a few times when we were doing the show, and I told it last week. I've been telling it a lot lately, I guess. But when Louise and I moved from Virginia to Connecticut, we had no car and we had no money for a car, and we ended up driving out of the showroom with 2 brand new cars.
I remember that. I love that story. Yeah.
Remember that one? Yeah.
Yeah,
that shouldn't happen in the real world, and yet it happened. How did it happen? Right. Well, we didn't have any resistance. We didn't resist the idea we could drive out with 2 new cars. We weren't sure how to make it happen, but it happened.
Yeah, and that's the stuff to me that it really, when you do it that way, it just becomes, this is it. It's going to work. It's going to work. Also, it's not going to work, or the same redundant thoughts will being the same. If you keep believing and doing what you have been doing, you're going to keep getting what you have been getting, and it is unfortunately that so many people are not raised with the law of attraction. I heard somebody the other day say they predict, and I hope this is so true, that one day manifestation, Mike Dooley said this, one day he believes that this will be taught in the classroom.
Oh.
What a glorious day that'll be, huh?
I'll go one step further. I think the day is going to come fairly soon when it's taught in the home.
Yeah, that would be, It was taught in my home. I promise you that. It is. My son, he was really had a year full of law of attraction and changing negative beliefs. He's doing really well at it.
That's really good. That's the perfect age to do it, because he doesn't have all the resistances built up yet. So even though he may have been through some really rough stuff, I mean, I can only imagine, but he's probably just changed like on a dime.
Oh, well, it's funny because if one show goes by that you don't have to do a disclaimer with me involved, we haven't done our job. So get ready for the disclaimer. But he came home one day and he said, I was bullied today.
Oh.
And I said, that's a choice. And he looked at me like, what? I said, well, it's a choice. I said, it takes 2 people to be bullied, one to bully and one to be bullied. And well, and we discussed all the ramifications around that. That was the last day he was bullied, so to speak.
Wow.
But it again, that's not a political. You can give your disclaimer. Joel's views are not those of the show. It is. Because people don't want to hear. Yeah. People don't want to hear that. But it is that. It's your perspective on things. You're in charge of it. You get to dictate it. And once you live that way, you and I talked in great detail. We don't have enough time to tell a story today, but about a young man named Stephen who was in foster care that totally turned his life around. For those that remember the story, real brief story. I started working with him. It instilled a lot of law of attraction stuff. I think he was 12 or 13 at the time. He's 14 and a half. He's already been adopted. He's thriving. He's on no medication. He's just so excited about life. And he's a normal 14-year-old too. Let's not be, he's normal.
Sure.
But has just the greatest outlook, and he's with a new family. He's just a leader in his school. It's just a different child because he stopped believing what everybody told him was wrong with him, and he started looking at it and saying, "No, I'm not that person." And he's just one day he will be on our show one day. So he loves the idea.
I'm looking forward to it also. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. But it brings to mind a very popular cliche, almost a phrase that gets used a lot these days, and that phrase is empowering children.
Yes.
I think about that phrase in the context of the law of attraction, and it reminds me how even the people who empower children really don't know how to do it.
Right.
Imagine, though, if they were empowered in this way. That's the thing that I keep thinking about. Imagine a whole country full of kids empowered in this way. The change rate would be absolutely off the map. Then we could, we can go on a 45-minute discussion on this. We don't have the time, but I do believe exactly with passion, I believe we're a generation away from fixing all of this. Yeah.
With this information. And the beautiful thing, the younger people are the
for the
ones
most part,
that
those
get
of us
the easiest. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The people who do the news, who do all the negative stuff out there, and who are paying attention to all that, even they don't necessarily realize it, but it's true. Even in those really horrible environments, there's a lot of good stuff that's happening, but you have to notice it. I mean, from my perspective right now, the big thing politically, right, is there's this huge gap in the country, and there's the right screaming at the left and the left screaming at the right, and you got special investigators and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, all of this has changed. There's a huge shift going on here. We don't necessarily know what is going to come out at the end, but we do know it's going to be better than what we've got right now. So
absolutely,
you don't have to worry about all the stuff that's going on. There's something big going on here.
I love that one of the subtopics in my book, the new upcoming book, Law of Action, is the chaos theory, that within the chaos is what everything's going to come out. It's very chaotic right now, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Now you don't want to get caught up in the middle of it, and I find it. In fact, I did a Facebook post before we went on the air, and I said basically fill in the blank. I think it's horrible that, in parentheses, the politician you support or don't support did what he did, and then even though the politician, in parentheses, that I do support did the same thing, it's not as bad. It's just, but it's whatever side it's all the same stuff. And the beautiful thing, it's all coming out, and it isn't about one side or the other being right. It's exposing the whole thing for what it is, a sham. It's very negative, and that's not. I think from within that, we're going to turn around and make this happen. This is the exciting part. I believe we've been on the cusp of change for a long time, and I think this is change in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. The bad kind of situation would be the one that wasn't chaotic, that wasn't shifting around, that was just static and staying that way. That's a really rough place to be, because now you're a long way away from something major happening. When you're in the chaotic stage, you're a lot closer to that improvement coming through. And while we may not know exactly what manner that improvement may come in or what it will look like necessarily in advance, you can pretty much count on the fact that it's going to be improvement. I mean, for all the problems that mankind has experienced over the last, 300 years or something like that, look at how much improvement has happened despite all of that craziness.
Absolutely.
It's just mind-boggling.
Well, look at our individual lives. There were times in my life where ungodly, just things that you just could not imagine happening. And it's horrible. How will this ever? Well, thank God they happened. They were events making me the person I am today. They were necessary events. I don't view them as bad anymore. They were traumas at one point. They're not traumas anymore. That's exciting to me. And that stuff happened that molded me. It turned me, and it was all. It could have gone the other way, but it didn't. It ended up here.
It didn't.
And
yeah.
And that's the way that I look at this. It's we need change. We look at the concepts of the way that we're it can't be sustained the way they were doing it. So as bizarre as it may seem, you and I are on the same page. I'm like, more chaos. Let's bring it all out. Let's get it all out there. And the change will come along because it's going to start being about stuff that matters at some point. And I'm really excited about that. Do we have another objection before we go? Is that
there's one last one. It's a strange one. It really ties into one of their classic examples. So we can do with it what we want. But the objection is, but I can't get to San Diego from Phoenix. And you know what they're talking about there.
Yeah.
Because you know Abraham-Hicks. But if you don't know Abraham-Hicks, that sounds pretty confusing. So I don't know. Maybe we should give some sort of a setup on it.
Yeah, it's the the concepts of. Do you have a better? I don't have a good way of explaining. I know them, but I don't have a good way of explaining.
Well, the gist of it is, if you were actually driving from Phoenix to San Diego, you would have a route to take, and you could get on the highway and you could start driving. Well, as Mike Dooley points out, you can get into your car and you can have your vision board in the back seat, and you can be all psyched and visualizing where you're going, and you're not going to get anywhere if you don't put the car in gear.
Right, exactly.
And then once you put the car in gear, you're supposed to drive on the highway, and you know that there's a route you can follow that will get you there. If you just keep following that route, you will get to San Diego. So why is it then that we assume that because you can do that, even though you can't see San Diego, and even though it's only something that's in your imagination, like for you, Denver was in your imagination when you were a little kid and you were flying there.
Exactly.
If it's only in your imagination, why don't we get halfway there and stop and say, I'll never get there, and turn around and go back home to Phoenix?
Right. Exactly. That's the, when you apply that to life, I will never have this. I'm always fascinated when I see generational poverty. And even despite great efforts to pull the people out of poverty, they keep resorting back to poverty. They see that as that's their answer. That's what they believe, and it just becomes self-fulfilling. And it's I've witnessed miracles in people's lives where they pulled away from that, and it was a big battle. I had a young man that I met at a McDonald's one time, and I basically gave him some free sessions over the phone. He didn't even really, we were just talking. He was really excited about being a manager at McDonald's. He was the first person in his family to ever graduate high school. Really nice, young African-American kid, really great kid. And so I asked him, I said, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go to college? He said, oh, no, I'm about to be a manager at McDonald's. And he said, I want to make like $12 an hour. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, that's good. You're very bright. Have you thought about anything else? Long story short, he went to the local community college, where, again, being from a poor minority, he got basically free college, and he became an X-ray technician. And and so his family, along this process, literally, they were calling me, asking me what I was doing to their son, brother. I mean, they did not like this concept, and because they didn't know anything different. You're setting him up for failure. You're doing this. He did very well. He met a doctor at the hospital, and the doctor just fell in love with this kid. He's a great kid, great personality. So he asked him to come be his X-ray tech at his office instead of working at the hospital. He made more money coming, and so he got they became very close. And about a year and a half into it, the doctor said, they considered the young man like family. He's paying for him to go to medical school. Isn't that amazing?
That's terrific. What a great story.
Yeah. But you can't get there from the inner city, so to speak.
That's right.
But until you realize that, and his mother eventually called me and she said, I don't know what to say. She said, I don't know why I thought I couldn't put into words, but my son's going to be a doctor. She said, I didn't graduate sixth grade. I didn't get out of sixth grade. And, I'm baffled that those weren't her words. She said, I'm grateful and I'm embarrassed that I said, you just were living what you've always lived. And and she's going back to school to finish her high school diploma at 70 just to do it, which is awesome.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's terrific.
Yeah, so within all that, you can't get there until you can get there, and there's no doubt when I just using the Mike Dooley stuff, I'll get in my car and I'm never doubting. If I'm driving to some place that I've never been, doubt I'm going there. It's just a clear path. You follow the route. If there's a detour, you go around it. You get. Think for a moment, I'll never make it to Oklahoma. It's just you'll get there. And there is a significant difference, and it kind of skates over the significant difference, which is when you get on the highway going from Phoenix to San Diego. You have like 2 or 3 choices, and you pretty much stick to that. You take one and you just stay on that route. Whereas in life, when you're trying to attract, a desired improvement into your life of some kind, serendipities get in the way, and all kinds of craziness happens to your route. So you may not know what the route is. And that's the hard part. You have to learn to trust. To trust that the route may not be what you thought it was, but you'll still get there. Right. And in my life, it's always I never understood the route, and it drove me crazy because I had so much anxiety, and I didn't trust the ride, so to speak, for the longest time because I didn't know the path. I'm at a point now that it's not even the path is irrelevant. I don't care. I have no investment in the path. It's fine. It's just one of those things I've learned. It's there. It's going to be there. You that piece is already sealed for me. There's zero fear attached to that. Still working on other areas, but that area it's not a problem. And when you do that, it's just no different than I'm not worried about getting up tomorrow and brushing my teeth. That's just part of life now. So I get it. But that path, that not knowing the path is a very, very scary process for a long time because it helps to, at least in your mind, it helps to know it. But my path was so bizarre, and there's no way I could have comprehended it, so it wouldn't have helped to know it. There's no way you plot that path. No, I don't think there's any way to do that. It probably wouldn't have been as good a journey if you had been able to. Oh, it's just stuff that I thought was irrelevant or wasted time turned out to be some of the most important times. It was all necessary leading to this event, and it's still happening. Like I said, I'm adopting another son. I have, writing another book. It's just one of these things, Walt, that I feel more energized and excited about life than I ever have, and it continues to grow. And there's every week more things present. It's really awesome. It's an amazing journey, and I think that's one of the things that we're hoping to project with this show. That you can have the journey too, and that you just start participating in life on a positive basis, and the journey starts. It's not like we have to be invited, Well, some people I suppose need to be invited, but right. It's that. It's letting go of that fear of the direction, the fear of the unknown. Change is scary to some people. Change is scary to most people, probably. Yeah, but sure. Understanding. If you don't change, the stagnant nature of things will mean things just continue to stay the same. So it's exciting that it's available to us. It's very exciting. We've got about a minute left. The voice is whispering in my ear, you got a minute left. So we got to wrap it up pretty quickly. I do want to remind people, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, please do so by going to loatoday.net. We're getting more and more people doing that, so this is how you can stay tuned, and it'll just feed right into your smartphone. And you can also find us in the Apple iTunes Store, in Google Play, so a lot of ways to subscribe to us. Joel, thank you so much for joining today. It's been great. It's so awesome to talk to you again. And to the audience, thank you very much for listening. It's great to be back. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.